Hey everybody, so let's talk today a little bit about my first fairy experience, or what I should say is my first experience seeing one. I knew they were real, I knew they existed and were in the woods watching me. I could feel them, I'd get images and flashes and stuff. I could hear them telepathically. I was talking to trees at the time. And when I say my first fairy experience, I mean one that is not bound to a tree, one that is not an animal, one that is a being of the nature realm that I was able to perceive probably when I was 28, 29, maybe a little bit younger. I had been doing this work for a long time, working with nature spirits, going into the woods, talking to the trees. I'll probably do a video on Fee Fi Fo Fum at some point, and I'm trying to see if I should make a note of that, and then and talk about how or some of the nature experiences I had with the trees and the energies of the trees and the beings there. But my first fairy experience, as many would call them fairy, I call them fae, would have been with a being who was probably a gnome of some type. So there was this marsh that I would go to, and well, yeah, it's a marsh or a wetlands. Wetlands is a better term for it. And the one county I was living in was developing forests and wetlands and different things into metro parks, but not your typical city metro parks. They were doing these as more natural preserve areas without a lot of foot traffic. Some of the parks they had did have foot traffic, but some of these were specifically set up for the wildlife, for the bird watchers, for the protection of natural species, not for the, a lot of city metro parks are more for recreation. It's the idea that they're putting aside nature in the city, but they become recreation parks instead of true nature parks. So these were true wildlife areas where you could go and experience, bird migrations, experience bald eagles. They had the one that I was at. We're on the at the time, and I still live close to it, the shoreline of Lake Erie up in Ohio. And the park that was being built was wetlands, and they were building it to attract birders for the most part, and to rebuild the eagle population and different things of that nature. I've seen a lot of eagles up there. I've intuitively been able to connect with eagles and just boom, like feel them, hear them, see them, be like, I'm over here, and go up and up, yep, there they are, that sort of thing. So it's a great park to experience different eagles and different forms of wildlife. But even in that space, they had a bobcat. I think it was a bobcat move through at one point, and I had found the scat of the bobcat that the park rangers were telling us about at a chamber meeting. I used to have, when I was a web developer, I had business meetings at chambers of commerce, and the chambers of commerce had events, and one of the events was at this specific park, where the ranger was talking about this bobcat, or actually it was a cougar. It was a mountain lion. I forget which term, you call it. Different areas call it different things. It was the bigger cat, the mountain lion cat. Bobcats are smaller. And so I had found the scat a week or two before then, and then I show up and hear the park ranger validates that there was a mountain lion that had passed through, which was really strange because they're not supposed to be in the area really. The development of land, the development of farmland kind of pushed all the animals away from where I'm at, because Ohio is a very farm-oriented place where the woodlands have been utterly decimated. from what it looked like 200 years ago. So I'm up in this wetlands exploring the park as they're building over time, and I would go and try to connect with nature and try to connect with the trees and the animals and that sort of thing. And there was a path that ran along the lake, and it went off. It split two directions. Like as soon as you entered the park, one went left, and the left path was complete. It looped a big loop around the wetlands and little paths through the wetlands. You could see all kinds of stuff and kind of get to the point where you're kind of lost and not have to worry about people being around. The path to the right went along the lake, and it kind of dead ended because the park was split into two pieces. It was the main park that I was in, and then another one that had an observatory tower they were building. But there was a ravine from a creek that went through, and they hadn't built the path to connect the two yet. And all they needed to build was like a 15-foot connection path, but it took them a year or two to actually put that into place. And so I would walk down the right to this dead end where there was a picnic bench, and there were trees, and then they had cut open the view and put a picnic bench and or a wooden bench anyway, not like a picnic table, but a wooden bench. And I would go and I would sit on it, and I would just sit there and I'd talk to the nature that was there. And the one interesting thing is that when you would enter this area, like the wetlands had its own energy. The wetlands, when you turned left, went down that trail, it was like it had its own little energy to it, its own little space. But then if you turned right, what happened is you went down through where they had mowed, and then you hit this space that was forest, and the path went along the edge of the forest towards this wooden bench. But when you entered, there's a big tree, and it's one of those big trees that's really noticeable that they leave behind because they're like, oh, this tree is old type of thing. So there's this really big tree, and as you pass, if you're somebody who can feel energy, you would feel the energy shift. And at times I would actually see a portal sitting there spinning, energetically spinning. So I made that my hello tree. For those of you who've read my books, and I'll probably talk about that more in how to communicate with fairies, I have this practice of saying hello in the woods, finding a tree, making that my hello tree, a handshake tree, where I put my hand on it, I say hello, and I let energy spread out from there. So that became my tree when I entered that section of the woods. And I would feel that portal, and I always knew I was kind of shifting vibrations to experience more beings. And I experienced on that side. It was interesting because on the other side, people were always over on the other side in the wetlands area, walking around, walking their dogs, that sort of thing. Not a lot of people, but enough people that the energy was shifted. This side, people, they would run down every once in a while, but because it wasn't complete, they didn't really go over there. It was still kind of natural energy. And you'd feel that shift going over there and end up seeing and feeling all kinds of different beings, like walking around. I once felt a wolf humanoid type of thing in the distance. Not the last time either. A wolf ET. This is a story for another later, but I once saw a wolf ET in the woods, humanoid extraterrestrial being. And so the energy would shift going down this trail, and I'd go sit on the picnic bench and I'd make an offering. I would make an offering by where the path was supposed to go. It was still blocked with a lot of like grass growth because they had opened it up, so it wasn't natural woodland growth. It was grasses and tall weeds and stuff that had filled in. And I'd put offerings down. A lot of times it'd be oats, nuts, berries, dried berries type of thing. And I'd sit there on the bench and I'd talk to nature. One time I go down that path and I sit down, and I had a granola bar of some sort, like one of those Kind bars or something like that, and opened it up, broke it apart, made an offering down at the grasses, and I just felt something come through the leaves and go, oh, yay. And I was like, oh, well, that's exciting, because not only that, I could see him. I could see this little being about, you're not going to be able to tell on the video screen, but um, he was probably, so when I think about it, he wasn't quite knee high on me, so he was probably a foot and a half tall, maybe a bit smaller. I'm not the greatest with heights, especially when I'm describing beings that I've met, because the perception of three-dimensional measurement is very odd to me for my perception. Like, you can tell me something is an inch, and sometimes I'll be like, okay, well, how big is an inch? Type of thing. So when I describe measurements, I always have to really think about, well, they were lower than my knee, type of thing. So he was lower than my knee, which probably puts him about a foot and a half tall. He had a hat on. I want to say he had longer hair. He was a greenish color, and pretty much like, if I remember right, he was pretty much all natural, like no clothing type of thing, but very excited, very, very excited that I had given him an offering. And apparently they had been watching me. They had been watching me for a while, because I kept going back, kept repeating the act of giving an offering and talking to the woods and building a relationship, something I talk about often in my with my clients and in my books and that sort of thing, about repetition. Repetition is important. So I sit it down, and I'm shocked, because I'm like, oh, I can see you. I can actually see you in this moment. I had built my awareness enough with the natural world, with the fairy vibration, that I could see him being there, not just like, and it was like an energetic haze, and in my third eye filled in the rest, not just feeling like the wolf being in the woods, or the tree spirits or different things. Like, I could actually see energy, and my third eye filled in the rest. So he's sitting there, and he's excited about this offering and these nuts or whatever I had given him. And he goes, that's for you. And I'm like, what? And he goes, that over there is for you, that over there. And I'm like, okay. And I turn around, and on the picnic bench, on this wooden bench that I had just gotten up from, that I had left, I had been there for a few minutes talking, and had given the offering after a little bit. I'm like, I was just sitting there for a little bit, just sitting there. There was nothing there, nothing on the bench, absolutely nothing. There's a quartz crystal sitting on the side of the bench. They had placed a quartz crystal on the bench as a gift for me, as an offering. It's not the first, it's not the last time. It might be the first gift I had ever received, at least knowingly received. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's the first gift I knowingly received from a fae. So he pointed it out. I picked up the quartz crystal, and he was kind of like, do you like it? I'm like, yeah, thank you, and I put it in my pocket or bag or whatever, and I left. And I still have that crystal today. I still have that gift from that being. That was one of my first physical experiences. Like I said, it happened when I was probably 28, 29, where I could see the energy of the being. In the third eye filled in the rest, because I wasn't vibrationally or ready yet to see them in the purest physical sense. So it was just a magical experience, which proved to me, like, yeah, I'm really working with fairies. I'm really seeing them, and the act of receiving a gift from them was magical. So if you do that, if you go into the woods, if you go into a natural area, and it doesn't have to be in the country. You can go into a city park. There are fae in the city. There are a lot of fae in the city, more than you would think, actually. But a lot of them do tend to stick more to the trees, and they try to stay out of sight of humans. A lot of them, the ones that I've seen in the city that do not stick to the parks with natural areas or the trees or the bushes are the more humanoid sized beings that are bigger and walking around uh, and moving about more. So they are in the city. And if you go to those places and you repeat the process and you just keep going back, like if you go to a park and there's a pond and you just go back and go to the same spot, like find a hello tree, find something where you can create a ritual of opening up the energy and welcoming them to talk to you, and letting your own energy kind of open and receive them too. And then walk through for a little bit, go about your hike, go about your walk, whatever it is, and find a space that can become your offering space. Could be sitting by a pond, could be sitting on a bench, could be sitting by a tree. The more natural it is, obviously, the better. So then make offerings. Make offerings in the grasses, by the tree, those sorts of things, and repeat. Repeat that process. The more you repeat that process, the more you'll build trust with them. Like I said, I was going through down this trail quite often. I lived 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away, something like that, for a car drive. So I would drive out, go to that park and or natural area and walk around a couple times a week and built trust, had experiences and built trust. And it was after a while, they had been watching me and he came out and was all excited. It was almost like he was the brave one, you could say. Kind of like a bunch of little kids who are you trying to poke something with a stick. Who's going to poke it with a stick? Who's going to be the one to go forward? This little gnomey type of being. Uh, it's probably more of a pixie or pisky. Pixie type being. A pisky. Pisky is just the Cornish word for pixie, but I can hear Doug, my juniper gnome, talking to me right now, and he's using the word pisky, uh, more like him. So they're just little people in the woods, essentially, with different likenesses and a lot more natural likenesses. And they had been watching me, and because they had been watching me, and I had been giving offerings, not just once, I had been freely giving offerings without expectation for many, 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 many trips. And then I built trust because I was not like the other humans that were visiting. So they opened up to me. And when they would open up to me, it's like the trail I was on, the people that were on it I'd walk in and they'd all walk out because the energy would push them out because my friends knew I was coming. So they were watching me and then ended up presenting themselves to be like, yes, we're here. We're here, we're real, and we accept your offering. And by the way, we have a gift for you, and put a quartz crystal on the bench for me to have. Like I said, I have it to this day. So that's the magic of the Fae world. The more you build a relationship, that they'll give you all kinds of stuff, all kinds of stuff without expectation too. A lot of them don't have any expectation. So if you want to experience more Fae, go into the woods, go into the natural areas, repeat type of thing. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching, and I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I love you all.